Vegan World 2026, here we come, the climate healers. Thank you so much for showing up. This next talk is with the truth behind dairy with Dr. Madhuri Paidissetti.
I also go by Maddie. I'm Dr. Madhuri Paidissetti.
Enlighten us. What's wrong with dairy?
Sure. All mothers love their babies. The maternal-child bond is a very special bond that is absolutely sacred and divine. Humans are the only species that consumes the breast milk of another species. I just wanted to talk about how we get milk, how dairy cows are treated. It's just a very painful process. In order for semen to be collected, a male bull has to be ejaculated with an electric rod to collect semen. And that semen is inserted into the cervix of a female cow with a steel rod. Forced insemination. The cow becomes forcibly pregnant and for 9 months undergoing a lot of duress, carrying her pregnancy, injected with hormones. Unfortunately, the baby calf is often slaughtered for veal or soft baby calf leather, or if it's a female, she's subject to the same life cycle as her mother. So dairy is a very abusive practice. It is a life of sexual exploitation, abuse, and just murder. It's very cruel. It takes only 4 months for a 70-pound baby calf to fully develop into a 450-pound cow. Dairy milk is basically the maternal nutritional fluid required to mature and nourish a baby calf quickly. Cow's milk is only meant for baby cows. Nature actually never intended for us to drink cow's milk. Its composition is not right for us. Dairy milk contains large amounts of bovine growth hormones that are meant to grow baby calves 40 times the rate of human babies in their very first year of life, and not far beyond that. Calves no longer consume their mother cow's milk after they have grown to their full adult size by about 18 months. Dairy milk is just not designed for human beings. It is really only meant for the fast growth of baby calves. We see here that a cow's natural life expectancy is actually 20 years. However, in the dairy industry, their lifespan is cut really short to maybe 5 years. Dairy is the #1 source of saturated fat and cholesterol in both Indian and many global diets. High intake of saturated fat is linked to higher rates of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. Saturated fat and cholesterol clog up our arteries and damage the lining of our blood vessels, our endothelium. That is like the defense system of our body. Our arteries dilate when we need it. So all this inflammation, saturated fat, cholesterol, atherosclerosis, it's very damaging. And this can lead to high blood pressure, so much stress on the heart disease, and strokes. And unfortunately, nearly all children consuming dairy have been shown to have fatty streaks in their arteries as early as age 10. Dairy hormones include maternal estrogen, progesterone, and IGF-1, which is insulin-like growth factor. Since IGF-1 is a growth factor, it can stimulate all types of growth, even unwanted growth like acne, aging, and cancer. There are many health concerns for children due to the hormones in dairy. Early puberty and acne are a direct result of dairy intake in children. So my younger brother, he actually never liked milk or even yogurt. Even when forced, he wouldn't even touch it. So no coincidence, he didn't have any acne and he grew to be tall, almost 6 foot. However, in my childhood, I was very fond of milk and dairy products. And I used to get teenage acne and breakouts. It's no wonder what it was due to. And also type 1 diabetes, it's insulin dependent. It's linked to the consumption of dairy products in infancy. So there was a Finnish study that was done in 2001 of nearly 3,000 infants who had a genetically increased risk for developing diabetes. It showed that the early introduction of cow's milk increased their susceptibility to type 1 diabetes. Also, the American Academy of Pediatrics observed up to a 30% reduction in the incidence of type 1 diabetes in infants who just avoid exposure to cow's milk protein for at least the first 3 months of their lives. In adults, increased levels of insulin-like growth factor 1 and bovine sex hormones have been linked to many reproductive cancers, including breast, ovarian, endometrial, and prostate cancer. Hormonal imbalances and reproductive disturbances are highly linked to dairy consumption. These are just a list of several disorders that are due to dairy intake. Casein has been linked to cancer proliferation. It is a milk protein and the main component of cheese. According to Dr. T. Colin Campbell, an American biochemist and the author of the China study, casein is the most significant carcinogen ever studied. So a quick Google search will yield many papers like this. Casein promotes many cancers like prostate cancer in males and breast cancer in women. Dr. Nandita Shah of Sharan, India, has brought widespread attention to modern day livestock farming and practices used in the global dairy industry. Did you know that milk contains pus? Why does milk contain pus? It's because her udders are only meant for her calf. When a mother's cow's udders are attached to machines or manipulated and squeezed by human hands to extract milk, they become red and inflamed, injured, just indurated and hard. There's also pus formation because of the injury and infection. You know, there's actually a law about how much pus is legally allowed in milk. It differs from country to country. In the US, the FDA allows 750 million pus cells in every liter of milk. That's equivalent to 7 drops of pus in about every glass of milk. And in Europe, the rules are just slightly more strict, and the regulators still allow 400 million pus cells per liter. In India and Australia, there's actually no limit on how much pus is allowable. So in order to control the amount of pus and infection, antibiotics are added to dairy milk. Did you know that 80% of antibiotics manufactured worldwide are actually used on livestock rather than human patients? And this causes issues with antibiotic resistance. So later on, if someone's infected with serious infection, there's a chance that the antibiotic used to treat it may not work because of these highly resistant and virulent superbugs that just don't succumb to standard treatment. Milk also contains blood, feces, and urine. Cows are actually very clean animals, just like humans. If they have the opportunity, they will never defecate in the place they're sleeping or residing. They will completely step away from their surroundings to defecate. However, humans have confined them to small places and tied them up, and they're forced to live in their own feces and urine. And this actually just comes back to us in milk products, especially if the udders have not been cleaned properly. And even if the udders have been cleaned properly, the surroundings themselves are never clean, and milk just splashes around everywhere before it's collected. So these are just some of the commonly consumed products that contain dairy. Lactose intolerance is actually a very common problem worldwide across global populations and communities. Symptoms include upset stomach, diarrhea, gas, bloating, because individuals lack the enzyme lactase, which is needed to digest the milk sugar lactose. Nursing children make enzymes that break down lactose, but as we grow up, many of us lose this capacity. As a result, lactose is not absorbed and it remains in the intestine where it causes symptoms. Milk is very bad for the bones. Countries with the highest dairy consumption also have the highest rate of fractures. Since dairy proteins are acidic, they actually put the body in a metabolic acidotic state. They leach calcium from the bones, and it causes osteoporosis or bone loss. Dairy consumption is also linked to higher rates of constipation, anal fissures, and atopic disorders such as asthma, eczema, and congestion, and also recurrent ear infections in children, and that's due to mucus formation. So the saturated fat and cholesterol intake from dairy affect the brain the same way that it affects our heart, and also cause damage in the very tiny, delicate blood vessels supplying the brain. So this leads to the onset of Alzheimer's and other forms of cognitive dementia. So what's in a glass of milk? This accurately sums up what dairy means to our body. Consuming dairy has a very huge ecological impact. Did you know that India is actually the largest producer of milk in the world? This map shows the global bovine density. India shows the highest cattle density on the planet. India even exports milk. And it's also the largest exporter of cattle because of the dairy industry. You can see the number of humans on the planet in red, and the number of livestock is in blue. And the number of wild animals that still exist are decreasing and decreasing day by day. A vast amount of resources are needed for animal agriculture. It's extremely energy intensive. A lot of water, land, and energy. Milk requires so much energy to come to humans. Energy is needed to feed the cows, milk them, pasteurize and homogenize the milk, and also for packing, distribution, and refrigeration. And remember, all of these animals emit greenhouse gases, including the most toxic gas, methane, which just pollutes the air. We're completely destroying our clean air supply and cutting down our forests to get grazing grounds for cattle and livestock. So according to lead climate scientist, Dr. Sailesh Rao of Climate Healers, animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change. It is responsible for 87% of greenhouse gas emissions annually. A very common question that is asked in Hindu traditions, Dr. Nandita Shah of Sharan, she explains that even Lord Krishna loved dairy. How many cows, though, back then did Krishna actually have? Some say he had 1,000 cows, but even if he had 100 cows, why would he need to steal dairy products? Because no mother cow actually produces more milk than her baby needs. And also you can see in this image that they don't have ropes through their nose and strings to tie them up. They have these beautiful flower garlands and they're roaming about freely. Also in mythology, the calf was allowed to have the mother's milk and there was very little left for human beings. Now it's actually the other way around. Humans take all of the milk. The baby female calf, she might just get a few drops of milk. So when we live a vegan lifestyle, not only are we minimizing our carbon footprint, but we also follow the principle of ahimsa to cause the least amount of suffering to other beings. Dairy actually destroys motherhood. All mothers belong with their babies, and families should be allowed to stay together. We must always embrace compassion and ahimsa and just be kind and be vegan. Again, remember, a whole food plant-based diet with ample alternatives to dairy milk and alternatives to leather. Whole food plant-based diet loaded with fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, and seeds. That's all we need to nourish our bodies and be kind to our bodies as well. Thank you so much. And I would like to now invite you all to ask any questions.
I see Vegan Doti has a question. Hey, Dr. Maddie, great presentation.
Hi, Jyoti. Thank
I've
you.
seen a lot of dairy products on the shelf, and I've tried some of them, and some of them I really didn't like they were either too liquidy or too much full of sugar. So
Sure.
which dairy products would you recommend which have good nutrition and also economical? Thank you.
Sure. So I like to go for products that have very few ingredients. I like unsweetened soy milk. And soy is great because it protects against breast and prostate cancer. It's overall very nourishing, but there's also many other alternatives. But I would always go for an unsweetened almond or macadamia or hemp rice. I mean, there's so many in the market right now. But again, organic, very few ingredients, like soybeans and water. So I shop that way.
Thank you.
What about you? What are your favorites?
I think I like the oat milk, and since I'm a lazy vegan, I just put oats and frozen peas in my smoothies and be done with it.
Very nice. The oat is very creamy. Yes.
You ought to try it. He's a
Absolutely.
Are there any other questions?
Shankar.
Yeah, just have one comment. Coming from an Indian cultural background, probiotic yogurt are a store. Is there any suggestions for the probiotics?
Probiotics. I generally make my own yogurt. Like I boil some soy milk and then, I let it cool down to room temperature. And then I add some vegan probiotic capsules, use the old culture, give it a stir. And then, and I just keep a culture going. So that's one way. Fermented kimchi. That's very nice source of probiotics. Sure, there's many other things.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Michelle?
Hey, I'm in Calgary. I got involved with a group, YYC Veggie Fest. A lot of the folks from the East Indian and Chinese groups, a lot of people vegetarian from birth, but it's that next step. I've actually been working on a transitioning from vegetarian to vegan workshop for a little while. So I'll definitely get in touch with you because it'd be great to have some of this information and maybe work with you to present it to that group, because there's so many that are like, oh, but I have to have ghee. But I'm making my Chinese omelet. They're like 98% there.
Yeah.
So it's how to get that last step. But the cultural impacts are so strong. Having the vegan conversation with an Indigenous person, imposing views.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Just being sensitive to cultural nuances. Maybe instead of ghee, we can use some coconut oil for the rituals and functions, or coconut milk. It's very metaphorically significant. Very nice, compassionate alternative.
I just like having the conversation coming from someone who's from that culture, because then it's going to be heard better.
Sure.
Let me get one more question in here. Michael Pickrell.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. You actually asked the similar question that I wanted to ask. I know a couple people who travel to India. They are vegan, and their justification to consume dairy is only when they are in India. They justify it with a cultural or religious thing. What would you say to somebody like that?
I'd love to give them some more resources, educate them on a bit of the cruelty. Then there's a huge vegans in India movement. There's definitely ample vegan groups in India who have a lot of resources. And a lot of Indian cuisine is easily veganized, so they can make the connection and it wouldn't be too hard. And there's also major documentaries. Prayer for Compassion is there. Land of Ahimsa is coming out. There will be another dairy full-length documentary.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maddie. Just so much information about dairy and Vegan World 2026 Convergence. We'll be back again in 3 months doing this again. So hope to have you back then.
Thank you so much. I would love to. Thank you so much for having me. This was such a pleasure, such an honor.